There's one thing that's unique about Football Manager 26 compared to the previous 19 editions of the same game. With a 2-year and 2-season gap between releases, we now have a number of teams that have managed to get relegated twice legitimately via their league position since FM24, including some that are a little too close to home. More on that later. Today, we're going to look at 3 clubs heading into the 2025-26 season following successive relegations from the last Football Manager game, leaving them 2 divisions below their position in FM24. Could you be the manager to help stop the rot at these clubs that genuinely need rebuilding? Let's take a closer look at the challenge each of these options offers. A quick public service announcement before we begin this video. You can pre-order Football Manager 26 now from Fanatical for money off Steam's price. You can also get an extra 5% off at checkout by using the code LOADFM26, and in addition to the extra 5% off, you'll also be helping to support this channel. That's the code LOADFM26 at checkout when ordering FM26 via Fanatical. Yes, our first team is Carlisle United, and it's been a very bizarre couple of seasons for Carlisle. The story begins in a very similar way to one of the other clubs we'll be talking about a bit later on in more detail. Following the excitement of a Wembley playoff victory in 2023, the club were preparing for life in League One for the first time in a decade. What followed, though, was sadly a summer transfer window that was suspect at best, leaving the club, in the eyes of most, unable to compete in the third tier successfully. Now, despite a mid-season takeover and promise of increased budgets, a bottom place finish and relegation straight back to League Two followed. A summer full of optimism came after that, though. Carlisle made several strong signings on paper and were among the pundits' favourites to be back in the top 7 in League Two in their 120th season. The immediate effort to bounce back in their centenary year never really materialised, however. After a slow start to the season, Paul Simpson was replaced by Mike Williamson, who had moved back to the north after guiding MK Dons to the playoffs in the previous campaign at the same level. Even following a slow start, though, Williamson was given the licence to make significant changes to the squad during the January transfer window, as he looked to implement his own very distinctive style of play. In yet another bizarre twist, though, he was sacked almost immediately after the winter transfer window closed, with experienced Mark Hughes coming in to replace him. With further free agent signings, Carlisle did show some fight, but it was, unfortunately, nowhere near enough. The club were relegated from the EFL in 23rd place, having remarkably used almost 50 different players over the course of the league season. With departures at the first hurdle in every cup competition too, it was really a season of absolute disaster for Carlisle United. That brings us to now, though, and the preparations for a season in non-league football for the first time in 20 years. Like that occasion, the club will be looking to bounce back at the first attempt. They've had a solid transfer window and are among the early favourites for promotion, but can you live up to the pressure and the expectation of returning Carlisle United to the EFL at the first attempt? Why not take the challenge and find out? It's time to leave the UK for our second club, and we're moving to Italy to talk about Salernitana, because just 4 years ago, it was the most exciting time in a generation for this club. They had returned to Serie A for the first time in the 21st century, announced Frank Ribery as a marquee signing, and were looking ahead to a top-flight season with optimism. Now, despite surviving in their first 2 seasons, the club never really found the stability it was looking for at the top-flight level. A trigger-happy owner saw several changes of manager and a conveyor belt of high-profile players head in and back out of the door. In the end, relegation eventually and inevitably came in a 2023-24 season that saw just 2 wins from 38 matches. Another summer of change unsurprisingly followed that. Almost the whole squad was replaced as the club prepared for life in a second tier once more. But things did not start well, and eventually Salernitana finished in a relegation playoff places, having been through 4 more head coaches during the 2024-25 Serie B season. There was plenty of drama at the end of the league campaign too, with Brescia receiving a late points deduction to change the league positions, and Salernitana having to reschedule the second leg of their playoff final with Sampdoria due to a large breakout of food poisoning. The club argued that the extra 2 days grace was never enough to get everyone healthy or give them a realistic chance of competing in that match, but having lost the first leg 2-0 and with a late red card too, a 3-0 second leg defeat succumbs Salernitana to double relegation and life in Series C for the 2025-26 season. After the years of joy, hype, big names and instability, will you be the one to steady the ship and guide this club back towards the Italian top tier? We finish back in England with the one that is both most painful for me and that I've had the misfortune of watching unravel in front of my own eyes for most of the last 2 years. Yes, I'm of course talking about my beloved Luton Town. As a season ticket holder since the League 2 season in 2008-09, which famously started on minus 30 points, I've seen a lot of tough times and a lot of good ones at Luton Town as well too. Many of the previous difficulties seemed inevitable though, whereas this one was perhaps a little more of a surprise. Much like Carlisle, who we discussed a little bit earlier on in this video, Luton had a phenomenal day at Wembley Stadium in May 2023, one I'll never forget, beating Coventry City on penalties to reach the Premier League for the first time, overcoming a number of dramatic obstacles on the day, including health concerns on the pitch early on. It seemed like Luton's story had come full circle from the continual turmoil of the 2000s and of non-league football between 2009 and 2014. Of course, a summer of derision followed from most football fans, as Luton spent less than 20 million on transfers, preparing for life in the Premier League, unheard of in the modern era. Kenilworth Road, of course, underwent significant renovation just to obtain the right to host Premier League football, and many onlookers predicted that Derby's record low points total would be easily beaten by the Hatters. Ironically though, Luton ended up providing the strongest challenge of the 3 promoted teams, and in fact sat outside the relegation zone as late as February, inspired by a rejuvenated Ross Barkley following a 4-0 victory at home to Brighton, still the best Luton performance I've ever seen in the flesh. But if this was the pinnacle, unfortunately, a sharp decline then followed. Injuries, a theme of the next 18 months, left Luton with up to 13 players unavailable at one stage, including all bar one senior central defender. Despite producing the longest run of consecutive scoring by any Premier League team in the 2024-25 season, Rob Edwards' side eventually fell to relegation on the penultimate day. Still, there was plenty of optimism in the summer. After all, Luton had been accused when they initially came up to the Premier League of preparing a side to win the Championship after an expected relegation the previous season. There were worries though. A quiet transfer window, a sudden shift in playing style and continuing concerns with injuries that plagued Luton led to a very slow league start. Despite steady home form continuing, Luton only managed one away win before Edwards was sacked early in January 2025, as Luton slipped into the Championship relegation zone with over half of the season played. The club opted to replace him with Matt Bloomfield, who had no Championship experience, and despite a brief rally late in the season, Luton fell to relegation on the final day after collapsing and conceding 5 goals away at West Bromwich Albion. Having tasted Premier League football just 2 seasons ago, Luton find themselves back in the 3rd tier of English football with a long injury list, bigger earners stuck on the wage bill and an unbalanced squad as a result of both. Could you be the manager to take them back to the top tier of English football? Well, why not take the challenge and find out? And please, let me know if you do it to make me feel a bit better. Those are my top 3 Stop the Rot challenges where genuine rebuilding jobs are required in FM26. Let me know if you'll be taking the reins at any of the clubs we've mentioned, or alternatively, let me know who you're planning to manage in the comments for Football Manager 26. We're going to have plenty of different save idea videos between now and the release of the new game, so if you want to make sure you don't miss any of those, please do subscribe and turn that notification bell on. If you enjoyed this one, please do chuck a thumbs up on it. And don't forget, you can pre-order FM26 via my Fanatical link down in the description or up in the eye above, and use promo code LOADFM26 for an extra 5% off. I'll see you again soon with another set of save ideas for FM26.